Get underway. Thanks folks for coming to the workshop. This workshop is 2 days non-stop, do you know that? Sorry about that. Yeah, you got the short version, don't worry. So we'll go for about 90 minutes and then question and answers, or we'll go a little bit longer, whatever it is. I apologise for the audio visual, it's out of my control. It was supposed to be set up, but it doesn't seem to work well here. Second time today, so no matter. The point is to get on with it, and today's workshop is about weight loss, and I've called it sometimes I've called this presentation the 7 secrets to healthy weight loss, sometimes I've called it the 7.5 secrets, other times I've called it unlock your genes to weight loss. And it doesn't matter the number, what is critical is that at the end of the day, fad diets don't work. Now before I get onto that, I just want to make something very, very clear. My name, just to check if you're in the right room, I'm Dr. Peter Dingle, PhD. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a real doctor. I have something called a doctorate, which meant I spent 12 years at university studying, and then on top of that, I liked it so much, I kept on studying. I did my research, I was an associate professor, and I retired 6 years ago. My passion is research. So literally every day my wife says I'm OCR, an obsessive compulsive researcher. I go to the journals, I read them, I translate them, and I talk to her about it. And this is usually by 8 o'clock in the morning, okay? So yeah, please understand that. And the reason I'm passionate about getting science and the truth out to the public. And at the moment, we get most of our information from, if I can quote Trump, fake news. That's the only thing I'll ever quote him on, by the way. But it's fake news. The amount of junk out there, crappy information out there, and it's all promoting the people who are sponsoring the media. So I look at the science, I go to the scientific journals, and I can say, look, when it comes to diets, when it comes to health and wellness, when it comes to diabetes, it doesn't matter. The stuff people are getting fed, literally via the media, is making us sicker. And so one of the first things I can do, the best thing for your health, is stop watching the normal media. Get on Facebook, get on my Facebook, get on other people's Facebook, and see, I actually link mine to the scientific studies. So I'll make a comment, then there's a study. So if you want, you can read the study. If you don't, you can just trust me that I've read it and put it up there. But it's what's important here is about going to the scientific source. And the science is very, very different to what you see out there in the public. Extremely different. We know how to reverse most illnesses. We know how to prevent most illnesses. We know all of this, and yet we don't. And one of the simplest ways to start with reversing a lot of these conditions is to work on weight. At the moment, in Australia, weight gain, overeating and obesity is the single biggest cause of avoidable mortality and morbidity in Australia. Pain, suffering and death. It's surpassed tobacco smoke now because tobacco smoking rates have gone down, and obesity and unhealthy eating practices have continued to go up thanks to our media and government and so on. So my message is this is avoidable, and the thing about weight gain and obesity is that it's not just about you as an individual, or not just about how you're feeling, it's about every aspect of our community. But when we look as an individual to ourselves, weight is linked with every single chronic form of illness. And I'll explain why later on. But excess weight causes inflammation. Inflammation is linked with every form of illness. Diabetes, heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure, you name it. So the trick here is if we can lower the weight, which we can, and I'm speaking not just from the science, but the practical perspective. I've been educating people on these topics for 30 years, and I do a lot of the same towns and cities every year. So I get people coming back and saying, thanks, I lost 10 kilos. Thanks, I did that. Thanks, I did this smoothie and I lost 14 kilos over 12 weeks. And people today came up and said, look, I learned some of the stuff you said, I practiced it, and I feel energetic. I've lost 20 kilos. In fact, there's someone in the room who told me that earlier, something like that. The person's smiling, but that's all right. So the message is, we know it works from a practical perspective, but also from science. So the fad diets don't work. And when I'm talking about the fad diet, I'm talking about let's get basic, calorie counting. One of the mainstays of weight loss in our society is calorie counting. The government is so fixated on it, seeming to do something and not. They made every takeaway place put up how many calories and kilojoules in each of their Big Macs and Subways and pizza and all that. Now, does anyone here read that? No. You know, because it doesn't make a dent. There goes someone in the shop and goes, oh, look, Big Mac, oh, 4 million calories. Oh, I can't have that. Oh, I better take out the tomato. Do you see something wrong with calorie counting? It's got nothing to do with the quality of the food. So what happens is people are focusing on the calories and not on the food. And I will come back and I will repeat this time and time again. It comes down to the quality of the food you're eating, not the calories of the food you're eating. That's an indicator. You can use it sometimes in science, but it's a really poor resource for weight loss. See, the whole point is calories aren't calories. First of all, there's about a 25% error factor in calculating calories. Then there's your own error factor, 100% in counting calories. Oh, I forgot I had that. Oh yeah, you know, that's all right.
So the Tim Tam in half,
yeah.
the calories fall out.
Exactly. There's a whole heap of tricks that people use. So calories, that type of stuff doesn't work. But what it does do is it focuses you on the wrong path. And so people are counting calories and they're not getting any nutrition anymore. And when I said before calories aren't calories, I'll give you an example, okay? Here's 1,000 calories of sugar. And here's 2,000 calories of almonds and mixed nuts, which is what I just had for my snack before coming in here. 2,000 calories. This one will put on weight. This one will lead to an increase in the risk of diabetes, heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure, you name it, it will contribute to because it's inflammatory. It will upset your gut microbiome. This one, twice as many calories, and it'll lead to a reduction in weight, it'll satisfaction, helping you prevent diabetes and all those chronic illnesses and so on. So, which one would you rather have? 1,000 calories? Well, unfortunately, most people go here because they think the calories are better. 2,000 calories of nuts are actually going to help you lose weight. This will help you put it on. Oh, say 100 calories of sugar will put on weight. That's the whole point. It's the quality of the food. So calories aren't calories. And another really good example of the calorie one, which I'll raise a few times, is the low-cal, no-cal artificial sweeteners. And the ridiculous thing about these low-cal, no-cal artificial sweeteners is overwhelmingly the science shows that they don't work. What happens is you tend to put on weight. What's even worse, the more you drink, the more you put on weight. So you can have a can of soft drink in this hand and you put on 3 kilos. You have one of these a day, you put on 2-3 kilos in a year. You have your artificial sweetener over here and you put 3 or 4 kilos on in a year. But what you'll also do is this increases your risk of developing diabetes more than this one. More than sugar. And so all these dietitians around the place who have been traditionally trained by the companies who are selling them the products, the vested interest in university, are huge. And so they're getting educated by the companies selling it that if you have no calorie food, so these dietitians are telling diabetics to go on it. And what's happened, the latest research in my studies, cell studies, my studies, and human studies have all shown that by having the low calorie, no calorie artificial sweeteners, they increase your risk of putting on weight and diabetes type 2. And the latest research is also Alzheimer's, but just forget about that one, okay? Forget about it.
We'll forget about it later.
I hope you picked that one up, yeah. So the message is really simple. Calories. So that's 0 calories or next to 0 calories, and it helps put on weight. Why? Because one of the things that it does is it disturbs the gut microbiome. One of the things. They're also what are called excitotoxins. So it's upsetting the messages coming from the gut, and then it also goes straight to the brain and upsets the messages going to the rest of your body from the brain. So your body is in a total state of stress. And as I'll highlight many times over, that stress is a big player on weight gain and weight loss. So my message is, calorie counting doesn't work. Low-fat diets don't work. Ever since 1983, early 1980, we really pushed, the government started pushing the low-fat diets would put on more weight. Why? Because your body craves food. And what happens in the low-fat diets is they've substituted the good fats for crappy fats, and they've substituted the good fats for sugar and carbohydrates, and the things that are absolutely fantastic for putting on weight. Now, this is kind of what we're being fed. Now, the last part of the calorie, let's say, these mythical fad diets and so on, and I'm giving you the basics here, is exercise. And perhaps the best and worst example of exercise is the Biggest Losers. 10 years on, the first study done on the first people who did the Biggest Losers in the US, it was a study on it, published in a scientific journal, which is where I get all of my information from. And it came back and showed that all of them are the same or excess weight 10 years on. They're sicker and worse off and wish they'd never done it. Because what do you think your body is doing when you've all of a sudden low-calorie junk foods and you've got excess extremely? There's a huge amount of metabolic stress, hormonal, biochemical stress on your body. So the first thing it wants to do is shut down, and that's what it's done. So their hormones are all over the place, and these are the guys and the girls. Their hormones are all over the place. Their thyroid activity and so on is all over the place. So the message is excessive exercise doesn't work as well. So we go to some really, really basic principles here. And it all comes down, this whole premise that I'm going to give you now, is it all comes back to your genes. Now your genes are your blueprints. Now the great thing about genes is that we learn about 15 years ago, you're not determined by your genes. Okay? We've got these 20, 25, 30,000, 32,000 genes in our body. They don't determine you. What they determine is certain characteristics, height and, hair or no hair or whatever, colour of hair, things like that. That's what the genes do. However, when it comes to our diseases and illness, the genes account for probably between 2 and 5% of the chronic illnesses that we're suffering from. There are rare diseases that are purely genetic, but the vast majority of diseases we're suffering from now, you hear people say, oh, it's genetic, my father, he had diabetes and overweight, and my mother, she was diabetic and overweight. By the way, they're not related, the mother and father, I hope anyway. Oh, look at my dog, it's overweight and diabetic too. And what it is we learn, and we are preconditioned, we learn from our families. So we're learning the bad habits from our families. Now, I'm fortunate, I won't mention this of my daughter, that she eats crap, but she feeds her young daughter immaculately. Immaculately. The only thing is, our young granddaughter sees the junk food there, and she sees it. And what she doesn't realise is it's in here. It's not what you tell your kids, it's what you do. So you want to help everyone lose weight? Lose weight. The best thing you can do to help your kids lose weight is lose weight, get healthy. That's what we do. People turn around and say, Pete, look, you're healthy, 90 years of age. Look, 90 years of age. Come to our store, I'll tell you how old I really am, okay? But, and they say, well, how can you keep doing that? How can you have the energy? And I say, well, this is what I do. And they go, well, that's what I want to do. So the best thing you can do for your family health overall and weight loss is to lose it so you inspire the people around you. Don't tell them to do something, do it themselves. So we're locked into our genes, and our genes are still what tell us to put on weight or not. And the great thing here, or the interesting thing here, is our genes are millions of years old. They've been evolving. They don't change every 10 years or 5 years or every day. They're millions of years. So every probably, I don't know, 100, 200 years, a couple of genes might change and so on. So all the diseases and the obesity that we're going through now aren't genetic. Okay, they're not genetic. What we're finding though is there's a science called epigenetics. Now epigenetics literally means above the genes. So we've got the genes. We've all got the genes for weight gain. We've all got the genes for diabetes. We've all got the genes for, whatever it is. But what happens to the genes is determined by what you eat and what you do to yourself. Everything from stresses to toxic chemicals to junk food to all those things contribute. So they turn on the genes to eat more. They turn on the genes to lower your metabolism. They turn on the genes for blocking your cells because your cells have enough sugar in them, so you have the higher sugar levels in your bloodstream. So it's not your genes, but what you're doing to your genes that's critical. So we know these genes are important to us. We know that everybody has got pretty well the same type of gene. Now some people are more vulnerable, let's say 5 or 10% more vulnerable. They'll put on a bit of weight. There's different body types, different metabolic types, but at the end of the day, we're still talking about all this. Now I also want to come back and describe a little mouse. And normally I've got a picture up here to show you these mice, and they're called the agouti mice. And I recommend you Google them some stage and have a look. And they've got a beautiful picture of a nice, slim, healthy-looking kind of one-year-old mice. Looks like he goes to the gym and works out a little bit. But they're healthy-looking, nice yellow colour. And they've got another one which is almost twice the size, probably is twice the size, brown, and it's extremely overweight. And it's the equivalent of a diabetic on the way to a heart attack, stroke, and all these other conditions. Genetically, they're identical. Genetically, they're identical. The difference is, one's mother was given some nutrients and literally some B vitamins and a few other bits and pieces. And as a result, that infant had no problems, this one had a lot of problems. So what's the difference? Well, what this means is that the conditions that we set for ourselves now can be passed on to the next generations. The genes aren't, but the changes to the genes can be. So that's why even now more important that we need to get onto the young mothers and educate them properly about how do we work with our genes. Now, coming back to our genes, simple, really, really simple process. What you've got to imagine 100,000 years ago, a million years ago, you were wandering around the bush or the savannah or somewhere around there, your great ancestors. If they started to lose weight, now remember, they didn't have Coles, Aldi or Woolworths. They didn't have the local supermarket. They didn't have a refrigerator. In fact, they didn't even have a bloody pantry. And they didn't have preserved foods that were last year's, e.g. McDonald's, cornflakes and all those things. So if all of a sudden they started losing weight, what do you think their body would tell them?
Go get some food.
Pardon?
Go get some food.
Go get some food to eat. Or what else would it tell them? So on the one hand, eat, but if they can't get food, what else would it tell them? Pardon? Hibernate. Yeah, slow down. Lower your metabolism. Because it doesn't want, your weight is basically what you eat and your metabolism, right? So if you're getting food, 100,000 years ago, we'd say, oh, slow my metabolism down. Slow my metabolism down. Now similarly, if I exercised a real lot, and I've already told you the answer to this one, but if I exercised a real lot, what would it tell it? Eat, eat, eat. So the classic example is if you go out and do a marathon run today, in the next 24 hours you will eat exactly the same amount of calories or a bit more than you actually burnt up. Because your body will hold on to the weight. It will not let you lose weight. And this is where all of the programs have gone wrong. They've all gone wrong because they don't focus on your genes, they focus on calories and low fat and excessive exercise and things like that. Whereas what I'm thinking and what I'm working with you on is really we're going to talk to our genes so our body can understand this ancient language, and the ancient language primarily comes down to nutrient-dense foods, and the foods will talk to the genes to increase. And I'll give you one simple example. What's a food that increases metabolism? Anyone have a guess?
Pepper.
Pardon?
Pepper.
Pepper, yeah, pepper. Cayenne pepper, coffee, caffeine. There's simple examples that everyone knows. So you're not changing the calories, but what are you doing? Increasing metabolism. Now, what I would suggest to you here, and I'll lead on to this, is basically everybody's metabolism in the Western society, not you because you're here and you're already learned, but the majority of people out there have low metabolic rates. Why? Because they can't run a metabolism on calories. You've got to run a metabolism on nutrients, nutrients, and nutrients. If you don't have magnesium, which is involved in 300 biochemical reactions, then guess what? If you don't have zinc, which is involved, if you don't have all of these other nutrients, the minerals, the vitamins, the plant-based nutrients called phytonutrients, then you can't have the optimal metabolism. So the ideal scenario here is what I'm going to show you in this is how to work with your genes to increase your metabolism through the foods, and at the same stage, decrease your hunger and need for foods. Stop some of those cravings along the way. And then we get into some of the politics of all this. And one of the things about the politics that we do is pretty well that we are constantly bombarding people with images of what we should look like. You should not have a six-pack, unless you go to the football grand final or something, okay? You should not have a six-pack. That is not healthy. Unless you're an 18-year-old person who's actually quite active, and that just happens. Or unless you're who's the ex-world sprint champion? Bolt. Yeah. Now he deserves his six-pack. Okay, he's got a 12-pack and stuff because that's what he's doing all his life. However, for the average person, forget the six-pack, forget those models on the thing. They're all doctored up anyway. So forget watching, and as I said earlier, get off the media. It's crap. It's junk. Okay. What you need to look for when you think, what do I want to be? Well, you go back, and this is going to be right at the end. I talk about our goals, but what you need to do is look and say, okay, what was I like around 20, 21 years of age? Maybe 22, maybe 25. If I didn't have a lot of weight then, or what should I be? What type of weight? Now, weight is a little bit confusing too, because what happens with weight is if you've got a little bit more muscle mass. I went to the gym and worked out for a couple of years, and I put on 10 kilos. It wasn't fat. I then went into a supermarket once, and a lady did a scan, and she said, "Oh, you're morbidly obese." I said, "I got some extra muscle mass." And she said, "Oh no, the fat must be under your muscle." Always rely on experts. Go back. Again, one of those, she tried to explain it, had no idea. So coming back to it is muscle mass weighs more. Weight isn't the only way to measure it. Usually the best way is actually your belt size or your pant size. Now in America they've got around that. A size 8 is now a size 6 in America. So they've changed the sizes in America. So the fatter people, if you're more overweight, you can actually feel, oh look, I'm now 2 sizes less than what I was. So, I know, crazy, isn't it? But that's how the media works. Now, just reiterating, we are basically hunter-gatherers. We are primates. 98.4% of our genes or something like that come from the great apes. So we have to go back into the history and look at what they did. We don't have to live in the trees and do all these things with lots of modern ways, but we have to look at what they did to try and work with us, so that we can work with us. So what causes weight gain? Well, I'm going to put it down into a kind of one simple model. Some form of stress. Now when I say stress, I'm going to be talking about nutritional stress, I'm going to be exercise stress, a whole raft of stresses. But in that stress is a little equation, and I've got what I call my disease triad. And it's inflammation, oxidation and acidosis. 3 things. Inflammation. Inflammation and oxidation and acidosis is the key and cornerstone of every single chronic illness. So if you lower inflammation, you lower all of your diseases. How's that? Good idea? And it's a really simple products and things in your life that you can do that with, okay? None of them I'm selling, I'm going to be able to show you. But what happens is when you've got excess weight, you've also, your actual, your fat cells, your white fat cells are actually generating inflammation as well. They're part of your immune system apparently, and they're generating inflammation. So they're making you sicker, and it's getting you on this treadmill. So what we want to do is when we have nutrient-dense foods, guess what they are? Anti-inflammatory, anti-oxidative, and anti-acid. So they actually prevent all those conditions for all those chronic health conditions, and in the same time reverse that vicious cycle. So we can actually start losing weight in a healthy way very, very quickly. So going on to it, I think our biggest problem is the fact that we've got these models who have, ripped abs and so on, is the single biggest cause of obesity in Australia and the US is the government. That's all that, no, not the fat cats in Canberra, it's the bureaucrats in Canberra who over the last 30, 40 years have set us on the wrong path. We started off with a food pyramid, and in the 1980s, the food pyramid was introduced. Now, a little bit of history. When the food pyramid was why I'm telling you this is so that you can become a bit skeptical. I'm a little bit skeptical, do you get that? Because I go to the science and say, look, the food pyramid was introduced, and when the scientific panel came back from discussing the food pyramid, and this was for the US Department of Agriculture, the scientific food panel said 5 to 7 serves of whole grains as the bottom of the food pyramid, right? When it went to the lobby group and the government officials, it came back as 9 to 13 serves of any grain, not even whole grain. So you can see the problem here. The science was there, and all of a sudden it got manipulated by the lobby groups. And you think, hold on, we're getting rid of that. We still teach that in some universities. And the dietitians are out there teaching this still, and you see it in primary schools still. I've walked into schools where I do a lot of talks to community groups, and there it is on all, the food pyramid. So I get my texture and cross out the bottom line and sign it. So everyone knows it's worthwhile. Message is, we've got that bad, and then you think, oh yeah, but we've improved since then because we've got all these other things, We've got to the food plate. The food plate is still wrong. It's not based on what we ate 100,000 years ago. And you're probably thinking, well, we're probably heading to the paleo diet, aren't we? Well, no, I'm pre-paleo. I'm pre-paleo. I'm the great APE diet. Do you like that one? I can't spell chimpanzee. So it's a great ape diet. But as I said earlier, the modified great ape diet that fits into our lifestyle and things like that. But then we've got the food plate, and that's wrong. It's wrong. It's still got, the single biggest proportion, all of the carbohydrates, and pretty well any type of carbohydrate. Then we've got all the facts on the side of the containers. And everyone read them? I used to as a kid. No, they're useless, aren't they? They don't really tell you anything. They do tell you one good thing: the amount of sugar. The amount of sugar. And that's really important. Read the amount of sugar. And I'll hide that a little later. And now we've come out in the last couple of years, the star rating system. Wow! Finally, the government's come up with a way to get a simple message across in such a complicated, confusing, wrong way. It is so corrupt. Milo rates 4.5 out of 5. That's 9 out of 10. That's a superfood. The kids come home from school and say, Mum, can I have some superfood? Mix it with some diet poison milk, and they've got a better food. Well, I think it's even worse. And you want to know the foods you're going to put on weight? The ones like these superfoods. Up and Go gets 5 out of 5. Yeah. This is how corrupt it is. And you're okay because you're smart, you're intelligent, okay? But the vast majority of working class Australians aren't. This is a class issue. You might not understand, but it's a class issue. Working class Australians put on more weight, have exposed to more toxins and all these, and the politicians up there in their little, in their desks in Parliament House, oh yes, we'll fix everything up. So we're poisoning it. In America, it's really brought about because the Latinos and the American black population are the ones who tend to be in that category and are suffering, and there are whole groups standing up, professional groups saying, we need to do something because that's the group that's biggest and worst exposed. The same in Australia, the working class Australians, and we need to do something about it. So we've got to get rid of this star food system. It's absolutely wrong. We've got to count nutrients. Then we go to the Heart Foundation tick. Heart Foundation tick. Well, you know, it's corrupted. It's all corrupted. Margarine gets it. Margarine is not a food. It's not a food. You can leave it in the garage and nothing will eat it. Nothing will eat it. Butter gets eaten, okay? I did a test. I did a review. One of my books, I did a review on margarine. 30 scientific studies showing margarine is actually toxic, leads to all these illnesses and weight gain and so on. And then on top of that, I thought, well, I better do a lab test. So I put it down, got a Labrador, and he wouldn't eat it. Now, if a Labrador wouldn't eat it, that's my lab test. I did a cat scan too, got rid of the fleas of the cat. Now, I'm joking, okay? But you get the idea. That's where I put it, and it gets a tick. Why? Because there are vested interests in there. And this is what scares me about our society. We rely on the money. The people who control the media, you know, literally the big food, the processed foods, the drug companies, the people who have the money. And they're not interested in your health and well-being, despite all their claims. So we've got all these processed foods, and I want to bring that back to some balance. Now, the thing about processed foods is, again, forget the calories. And even forget the nutrients, because as soon as you start processing foods, you're changing the whole constituency of it. You're making it more toxic. Forget adding nothing to it. You're changing the constituency of it and the way your gut microbiome and your body reacts to the food. Then we start putting in simple things like emulsifiers so that the fat and the water mixes together. Okay, pretty good, because then you don't see that creamy bit on top, which is the only bit that I have. You don't get that creamy bit on top and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden the body, your body is going, wow, is that water? Is that milk? Is it fat? Is it whatever it is? The body is totally confused. As soon as you process it, it confuses the body. As soon as it confuses it, creates stress. As soon as it creates stress, guess what your body does? Boom, blows out. So what you want to do is minimize these types of stress that are coming into the body. So processing, any form of processing is going to put on calories. The other thing is, one of the great things about food, and again I'll mention this a little bit later, but raw food, when you have raw food, it actually sends a message to your brain to stop eating. How many apples can you eat? Anyone here ever eaten more than 2 apples in a row? No, you can't. Well, that's a lie. Anyone here had a full apple pie on their own with 12 apples in it? Yeah, and the pastry and cream and on top. Yeah, you've had the 12 apples. Why? As soon as you process, it stops sending messages, 1, via your gut microbiome, and 2, via the raw nutrients. And I don't even know what they are. I just know it happens. Try to eat raw food. Again, have a raw carrot and have cooked carrot. You can eat 3 times as much of cooked food. So the message is simple. The rawer the food, the more the message. The less processed it is, so raw food, processed foods. I'll come back to the raw foods later on. So we want to stay away. Now, in the processed foods, we've got a whole heap of toxins added to it too. Everything from your preservatives, you've got your antimicrobials, you've got your flavour enhancers, 621, 651 I think, MSG, and its cousins and so on. And you've got all these foods. Now, nearly every one of those, every study I've looked at, nearly all of those, in animal and human studies show that they help put on weight. So again, as soon as you start moving towards these preservatives, food additives, the colours and things, it puts on weight. And of course, who's attracted to that? The kids who don't know the most, and the mums and dads, and they get pester power and get more of that junk food. So the flavour enhancers, all of those things lead to weight gain. So again, what do we do? We're moving away from those processed foods. Now, already you can see in your mind, you're going, well, this is going to be healthy, isn't it? That's the whole point. We're moving away from these processed foods. As soon as you start processing, the first time you start chopping it up and grinding it up and stuff, you're creating unhealthier foods. You're changing the constituency of it. So, what's the next thing? Well, I'd love to show you a little graph of it, as I don't have any visuals here. I want to highlight what happens, and I need your imagination here. Okay? I'm going to do a graph. See the graph? Everyone see my graph? Watch out this one. Don't put your hand down, your eyes down, you miss it. There's my graph. Now, in the middle of this graph, there's a line, and that's your metabolic rate. Now, I've already mentioned that. Now, your metabolic rate in reality goes up, and while it's going up, it's down and up and up and down, and then goes down at night. That's how it looks. I've got a nice straight line, all right? Like that. Now, what happens when you have a normal meal is your sugar spikes, and it goes way above your metabolic line, causes an insulin to be injected in, takes the sugar out and stores it in the fatty places because it won't let it into the cells anymore, and you end up putting on weight. Now, if you have a Dr. Dingle's healthy meal, and I don't sell packs by the way, but Dr. Dingle's healthy meals, what you do is you have a sugar peak that goes here, underneath that line, underneath that metabolic line. Now this metabolic line is really important concept to understand. So we've got this metabolic line, right? If it stays under it, you lose weight. So you can eat as much food as you want, but it's got to stay under that line. Now the whole point about it is it's almost impossible to overeat if you're eating foods under there. What are the foods that fit underneath it? I'll show you as we go on, and the type of foods that will stay underneath it. Now here's a little hint. I'll show you how this works. There's a large amount of evidence to show that if you eat at night time, you put on more weight. Now here's one of the reasons. At night time, your metabolic line is right down here. You're not moving around, you're not walking, you're not doing anything, you're laying down, going to sleep, you have a big meal. Before, guess what? It's going to skyrocket so much higher than the metabolic line because the line is down and you've had that normal processed Western meal. So if you can understand that, the less metabolically active you are, e.g. at night time, the more weight you put on. How's that for a little hint? Do not eat late at night, or if you do, you've got to eat foods that stay under that line, which I'll show you as we go on. So you've got the idea of that metabolic line. What we want to do is up that. What do we do up that? And we talked about it earlier in terms of things like capsicum and all your foods, any chilies and pepper and caffeine. Now you're not going on Dr. Dingle's caffeine chili pepper diet either. Don't worry. They're just things you can add that have a 1 or 2% factor. I'm going to give you some big picture stuff here, and I'm going to give you another 20 or 30, 1 or 2 things, 1 or 2% things you can add on to it. And the things we've found with people that adopt this strategy is that they will lose healthily with getting more energy and feeling better. They will lose 1 kilo to 2 kilos a week. That's the type of weight loss people see on this program. Now, one of the biggest causes, I've already said, is the junk foods we eat, the nutritional stress. It's all those breakfast foods. If I was to tell you the single biggest cause of obesity in children, it's soft drinks. It's soft drinks. So we need to do something about it. We can no longer sit back and think it's okay because it's your taxes who are paying for all those obesity-related illnesses coming on. So what we want to do is start campaigning, start talking to people and saying, get rid of those soft drinks. All of them. Low calorie, no calorie, soft drinks. They're a treat once a week, not 3 or 4 times a day. I've seen 2-year-olds walking around with a can, which is the equivalent of me walking around with about 3 litres of Coke. Put it in perspective, please. It wasn't meant, and yet, these companies are so responsible. Rubbish. They are only designed at getting money. My only aim here is to get people healthy. So we get them off the soft drinks. We have to have a serious campaign, an anti-soft drink campaign. Oh, hold on, but the government doesn't want to do it, so they do these really vague ads. The government is so corrupt. I can tell you right now, I was involved in tobacco control legislation 30 years ago. We did the seminal research study. My group went in and monitored the tobacco smoke in 30 or 40 locations in Perth. And the results were able to show the government that no matter what, you could not get rid of the tobacco smoke. Open windows, vents, it didn't matter. So therefore, under health and safety legislation, they were able to say you can't expose the bartender or the people walking around to tobacco smoke. They had to ban them in pubs. That was my research, okay? Pretty formidable. Did a huge impact. Western Australia, then it followed on around the country. That's where our research fitted in. So, and